Hi guys, how do we make sure that we make this something that people all across the business can understand? DevOps is not just for the people sat in an engineering role or sat in a technical team or sat in IT as we know it today. But what we hear about when we talk about DevOps and what people talk to our C-suite about is the promised land. And all they do is give these one-liners of, we want to do higher quality products and we want to be quicker at getting to the market. We want to work better together. And those things are all really obvious. And of course, everyone wants to buy into them. And of course, your C-suite's saying, yeah, absolutely, we want that, make that happen. But realistically, I don't think they're really understanding what's involved in allowing you to do that. And I think it's important that we start to think about the different perspectives. So really, what I want to ask is, do we actually all have the same understanding of DevOps? And I would say no. Maybe this is just my opinion. Maybe this is something that you will resonate with. But as I see it, we often end up in two situations. We've got a leadership team on one side, and you've got your engineers and your engineering teams on the other side. And they're talking about this thing called DevOps, but they're talking about a different thing. You've got leadership that are saying, well, we've spent the last 3 years investing in our DevSecOps application teams, and yet we haven't got a faster time to market. We haven't achieved these higher quality products. Meanwhile, you've got your engineers sat on the other side going, well, really, you need to invest in the things that allow us to build those applications in a better way. And that requires us having some sort of equipment or some way of actually handling those things that are repetitive, that are time-consuming, that take up the time that we actually want to spend on building good stuff. So really what we need to do is bring those two things together. DevOps is actually making sure that the enablement is there, the investment goes into that enablement, to allow those things that happen with DevSecOps application teams to actually deliver some value to the business. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. Engineers don't just build for the sake, well, actually, some engineers do build for the sake of engineering. But on the whole, when you're working in a company, it's because you want to do right for your customer. So what should we be asking? We talked about that promised land, but what's the actual questions that we should be putting to people? And I want to turn it around and say, well, actually, some of these things are valid, but I think we just need to rephrase them. So rather than talking about the promised land, let's make it real. Let's talk about the things that people can actually tangibly hold on to and think about. So instead of talking about speed and time to market, you can say, what is the biggest bottleneck that's preventing us from getting something out to our customer? What holds us up? Instead of talking about collaboration and teamwork, say, what are we doing that doesn't have a clear purpose, that might mean that people are arguing over priorities? Instead of talking about simply scaling and flexing, which sounds really great, probably when you're at the gym, but in realistic terms, what we want to know is, what do we build where we lack confidence, or where do we feel like we don't actually want to touch that bit of code because we might break something down the line? Productivity. Everyone wants to be more productive. Of course they do. But instead, let's ask the question, where are we spending time on repetitive tasks, things that bore us, things that are just in the way, stopping us from doing the really good stuff? And then finally, rather than talking about simply quality, let's ask the question, which bugs keep falling through the cracks? Because they're the ones that we need to think about, and they're the ones we need to deal with and handle. So this is great, and we've got some questions here, and these are really poignant questions that we can start to ask our leadership teams, our senior people, other people outside of our tech and our IT teams. But what do we do with those answers? And a lot of the time, questions will come up about, well, which framework and which methodology should we be using? And actually, there is no one-size-fits-all. Realistically, what we need to make sure is that you ask those questions and you use the answers to determine, what direction are we going in? What drives us as a business? What do we make our decisions based upon? What are the challenges that we might face? And ultimately, what are the incentives that will allow us to do better? And if you can start to think about those things, that will help you make informed decisions about where you invest your time, your money, and make your developers' lives easier. That is it from me, and I hope that you take away some thoughts around how you can position this in a slightly less technical way to some of the people that are outside of the tech teams and outside of engineering, because it's important that we start asking those good questions to make sure that they start to understand a little bit more around how DevOps impacts the bottom line for the customer. Thank you very much.